Hello everybody, Sasha here and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going on the Essex Trail. It is all about Essex. So give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe if you would like me to talk about the whole Essex saga and what I think. So basically, the other night I was conversing with Rio Zero, who is somebody on YouTube, just great channel, and he was asking me about my thoughts on the whole Leah Betts and Paul Betts situation. Mm. So we are here today. I'm recording this on Friday, the 22nd of November, 2024. And November was the time that it all went down in Basildon Town. November 1995, to be specific. And although I have mentioned some of these things on various podcasts, Liquid Bullet and my own, I don't think I've really kind of unpacked it in date order. And I think it's really important for people to, when they're unpacking this, is to take it back and realize what was happening on specific dates. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to transport you back to November 1995. Some of us were around then, some of us weren't. Some of us were actually there, man. Some of us weren't. And I was 21 years old, living in Basildon in the Craylands estate, salubrious Craylands estate. God knows why I bought a house there, but I did. It was an end of terrace house. I thought it was a bargain, and I had some raving mates living there, near there, and everything was about raving in them days. Because 1995 was an absolutely amazing year for music, and it was an amazing year to be 21. I can tell you that. So I was a barmaid at Raquel's in November 95, and I'd been a barmaid there for about 6 months, since around about March 95, I believe. And I think it's difficult with as much confusion as has been placed, I believe, deliberately and on purpose to put people off the scent. It is really important to take it back and look at the people involved specifically and how this all was played out by the mainstream media and, our good friends, the BBC and The Sun and the News of the World, and work out and unpack what we believe to be truth. And people are speaking from the heart, and that there's no deception going on, and what we believe to be very suspicious, highly suspicious, or downright obvious bollocks. So that is what I'm going to do today. And so I'm going to take you back to November 95 when I was a Basildon girl. I was working in the City of London in the week. In the daytime, I wasn't just a barmaid. Not that there's anything wrong with being just a barmaid, but I was a reinsurance broker for Lloyd's of London, that big building in the middle of the City of London. And I had been working uptown, mate, since the ripe old age of 17 years old. Yeah, so I think I might have even been 16 because I'd left home when I was 16, got engaged, got a flat. Well, he got a flat and moved to Chadwell Heath, mate. And I was working as a reinsurance broker. I'd been headhunted to my most recent job at Dennis Clayton. I'd worked for Aon before that, Nicholson Leslie. And I was a city girl. making my way into the world as a young blonde city girl who at the weekend liked raving and had been raving hard since the start of 95. So I haven't been raving that long when all this was going on. Maybe the end of 94, I think it was. Something like that. But I got into raving quite late, really. Like some of my mates got into it when they were 16, 17, and in the early 90s. And I was really jealous of them because those raves looked amazing. And so, not nastily jealous, but I didn't get into it as early as some of my mates and some of the people of my age group did, because the acid house raving era explosion started in 1988. And so an awful lot of people were doing an awful lot of E's. E's are good, E's are good. An awful lot of E's, and an awful lot of people were making an awful lot of money out of everybody doing loads of E's and other drugs. Now, E's back then were a tenner. That's how they were. And over the years, they did go down and down in price, and people were getting them for a quid. But they were generally, you get what you pay for, and they were pretty shit by the time they got to a quid. When they were a tenner, when they were 20 quid, like in the like late 80s, early 90s, they were just like so pure and so amazing, allegedly, because I never did any rhubarb and custards or Dennis and the Menaces like some of my mates did. Because at that point I was engaged to being an insurance broker and all of these kind of things, and I just hadn't got into raving. But I did take my first E at Adlib in Southend-on-Sea at Perfect Virtue with my cousin. And and I found love. No. I'm not sitting here advocating drug abuse in any way whatsoever at all. But I do not believe, I'll say here now, really, that one pill really killed anybody. But, it's up to us to unpack this. And Rio Zero asked me to unpack it and he said he'd be interested. So that's just the gauntlet laid down. And I am going to take you back to that time because when you unpack what was going on beforehand and who was involved, then it can really help to find out who may be premeditating murder of the first degree. Oh, I'm not laughing about it. Oh, I can't even watch horror movies. I like literally, I don't like violence. I'm a super empath. I have to have a lot of boundaries in my world to be able to cope with that kind of satanic, sinful behavior, because that's what it is. Murder. Murder. That's how the Yanks say it. Murder. So I'm going to take you back to, first of all, where one of my podcasts that I've done is called Police Raided Police Corruption. I think it's something like that. Anyway, I'll put it on a link on the end of this one. Really gonna go hard on these dates and get them right for us today and not fuck about. So these dates, a Friday. I'm gonna make sure I've got my calendar up so I don't mess up. It was a Friday, and Friday night was the day that I worked at Raquel's on a Friday night. The club didn't open till maybe 9 o'clock, 10-ish, maybe 9 o'clock, as it was Raquel's back in them days, and we shut at 2. But so the club opened about 9, and I was a barmaid with my mate Cal, who was also living with me at the time in Basildon. And she'd been working as a barmaid for a bit longer than me. And a barmaid had lost her job for some reason. And so I got offered the job. And so on Friday night, after doing my week in the city as a Lloyd's of London reinsurance broker, marching up and down Lloyd's of London and market tuning up and down Fenchurch Street and the Gherkin and all of that kind of stuff. That is the reinsurance, they're like the City Mile or the stockbrokers, and all of these people are. That was where I was working. So on a Friday night, after I finished at 5 o'clock, I shot out at the office as fast as my little legs could carry me, got on the Fenchurch Street line, and went back to my home. So I get off the Fenchurch Street line at Basildon now, and I was living in Craylands, and I get off at Pitsea actually, and I would hop off home and go to Raquel's and work on a Friday night. And that had been going on for a while. I've got my dates right, I've got my calendar right, and I'm not going to get anything wrong now. Okay? God be with me. Let's try and unpack this without everybody getting confused. It is Friday, the 3rd of November, 1995. I get off the train at Pitsea and my boyfriend isn't there to pick me up. I'm there with my best mate who also lives with me. What's gone on? Shit the bed. I get to my house and I'm being raided by Essex police. Now, I've done a whole podcast on that, so I'm not going to go into the finer details. I'm being raided by Essex police on Friday, the 3rd of November, 1995, before going to work at Raquel's. Now, I sat in the house for an hour while they raided the house. It all went on. And then my boyfriend, who had just left the house and been pulled over at the garage outside, came back in the house. He was like, told you wouldn't find anything, nothing here. Rah, 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 rah. He didn't have no respect for the police already, but I don't blame him. He already knew. And, but at that point, there was a radio in the kitchen, and I heard them go, "We've got a result in Southchurch." Now, I came to find out after this raid that my mate, who I'm not going to actually say his name, but my mate, who was serving up to his mates, basically, no big drug dealer. He was just a young lad trying to make some extra money, that kind of thing, living on his own. He was a really nice lad, actually, but he did run and work and get stuff off Mark Murray. Now, Mark Murray, we do know, is the Raquel's dealer. That is out there. I cannot be getting myself into trouble or anything like that, as everybody knows that Mark was shifting all of the stuff in Raquel's, and that was for Bernie. That was the only relationship they had. They didn't like each other as such. Lots of these people don't have any relationship other than that kind of working relationship. Maybe they did like each other then. Maybe they're pretending they did. Maybe they thought they did. I don't fucking know. But what I do know is this is the truth of who was serving the pills up to the youngsters in Raquel's. So on this night, my mate in Southchurch, he's got a load of E's. He got raided the same time as me, and he had 28 apple ecstasy pills and a small set of scales, and got nicked and got taken away. Some kind of hair really itching me. And he got taken away, and I never saw him again. Bless his heart. I don't know what happened to him, but I was told afterwards that he had grassed and split the country. I have absolutely no idea if that's true. That was just what we were told somehow afterwards. So At this point, we can verify and know that Essex Police at this point had 28 apple pills. Apple pills being specific, as in apples, and an apple pill was the specific one that they said that she was to have taken. And it's really also important to understand that the Criminal Justice Bill came out in 1994. I will just check when that was. Hold on. So, the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994 is an act of Parliament, and it was introduced a number of changes to the law, most notably in the restriction and reduction of existing rights, clamping down on unlicensed rave parties and greater penalties for certain antisocial behaviours. The bill was introduced by Michael Howard, Home Secretary of Prime Minister John Major's Conservative government, and it attracted a widespread opposition. So, this is the Public Order Act that was passed in 1994. There was three massive demonstrations in London in 1994 in Hyde Park, in Trafalgar Square, and an awful lot of demonstrations against this bill because it was targeted at football fan culture and free parties. So, whereas there had been no law against congregating outside, having a party before, it was now said that if you were over 100 people, then you were considered to be having a rave, then you were breaking the law. And this is the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act 1994. So there had been a massive clampdown actually going on the wider scale of the world regarding raves. And this had moved raves right into the clubs. Um, but it was also really against drugs. Now, for what reason? Obviously, raves have long been associated with people getting off their head. Um, but that was also demonized in many ways because the whole narrative that come out of the mainstream media and had been coming out of it for some time at this point was that he's are going to kill us basically, and that they send us all raving loony, even though they hadn't killed anybody, or hadn't enlivened anybody. I don't know why I can't say the word killed. Is this a dodgy word anyway? So the whole clampdown on the rave scene is, I believe, very significant because also in November 95, Mixmag published an article regarding the police swoop on a club UK in Wandsworth. Now, anybody that knows this story knows that they, the firm, also ran the door of this club. And in October 1995, 150 police raided it on a Saturday night. Operation Blade, this was, which involved dogs, horses, and the Territorial Support Group. 800 clubbers were turned out onto the streets and many searched. 10 people were arrested. The police raid on Club UK was carried out with the TV cameras in attendance, correctly described by the club owners as a media circus. It seems the raid was deliberately timed to provide a story on which to hang the launch 2 days later of a new anti-drugs campaign called Snap, Say No and Phone. Ironically, the police launched this campaign at Club UK's South London rival club, the Ministry of Sound, a place where drug use was just as widespread. Now, I'm just reading that from History is Made at Night Blogspot, Club UK in Wandsworth, Love, Ecstasy and a Crime. So here we are. This is October 1995, and there's a massive raid on Club UK. So we understand that there's this massive clampdown going on. Now, funnily enough, on this particular article, it does next say this. With hindsight, there were some dodgy people around Club UK. As in the United States, when prohibition of alcohol led to the mafia control of drinking in clubs, the prohibition of drugs like ecstasy created a huge market for UK gangsters to fill. In December 1995, right, so we know what happens in December 1995. I'm going to go back to that in a minute before we get carried away because it is important in this story that we don't get carried away. So there we go. So 3rd of November, I get raided by Essex police, a setup which Essex police are denying all knowledge of at the moment. I've did a SAR request and they're like, no, don't know anything about that. Well, they haven't said, they just said they haven't got anything on their records or something like that. No, what did they say? They said there is no information that the chief constable is required to supply to you under the legislation. So is there no information or just no information that is required to send to me? Are you withholding some kind of information that you don't require to send to me? Anyway, so key point, key point, key point is that at this point, the police are well aware of what's going on in a drug town and they have 28 apple ecstasy pills in their possession. I go to work that night, on that Friday night, carry on as normal, and go to work the next week. And then the next week, so let's make sure we have all of our dates. On the 10th is Friday night at Raquel's again. And Stephen Packman purchases a couple of pills, 4 pills, I believe, for the party tomorrow night because his mate, Leah Betts, is having an 18th birthday party at her dad's house in Latchingdon in Essex, which for all of those people that don't know the geography of the area, Latchingdon and Rettendon are very, very close. They are very close. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are very close. Anyway, not wanting to lead anybody down any aspersions. However, the next day, Saturday, the 11th of November. So, Saturday, the 11th of November is Leah Betts's 18th birthday party. However, it's not her actual birthday, which is common. I'll tell you when it is. So, Leah Betts's birthday actually is the 1st of November, number one. So, the 18th birthday party, the 18th birthday party she's having is not the weekend after her birthday, but the weekend after that. There you go. So whatever, for whatever reason, maybe they were just busy or whatsoever, you know. But anyway, this is the Saturday night, the 11th of the 11th, 1995, where Leah Betts is having her 18th birthday party. So, what happened at the party and who was at the party? So, we know that Leah Betts, it was her 18th birthday party, bless her heart. And she had various mates over. It does list that there was around about 30 people there. But there was a key best mate called Sarah Cargill. And she said that Sarah Cargill said that they had both swallowed a whole pill. They discussed whether to do a half, which was normal, and they both swallowed a whole tablet at 7:45 p.m. on the 11th, Saturday, the 11th of the 11th. It is also said that Leah had drunk only moderately during the evening, i.e., alcohol, and that she only became ill towards the end of the night when she began drinking glass after glass of water. So it said that it was 4 hours after she took this ecstasy tablet, 4 hours, that she suddenly became ill and began drinking lots of water. Now, anybody that knows anything about ecstasy knows that you come up in within 30 minutes. Now, if you go back to my other podcast, you will know that I also got a apple pill off Mark Murray on that Friday night, the night for Leah Betts' party. Me and my best mate Cal, I gave him free drinks. We gave him free drinks. He gave us a free one at the end of the night. We took that home. That was our job done. Right? I did one that night. They were strong, good, great, pretty damn pure, strong. Nothing we couldn't handle in any way whatsoever. But anyway, obviously, I know everybody is different. I'm not making any assumptions. However, I want to read and tell you exactly what's happened here, as in the fact of if Leah had taken one ecstasy tablet 4 hours prior, then the effects would not be at their strongest at all unless something had been added further. So whether she'd done more than just the one, or but there's no way that 4 hours after taking one ecstasy tablet, you start to feel ill, and then because she would be if she wasn't drunk, then. But what I do know is this, like, if she'd done the apple 4 hours previous and they'd seen her within that 4 hours, there's no way well, especially in that first hour, that you wouldn't know that she'd done something because they were strong. They were strong. And they were pretty trippy. And so there's no way that Leah there's just absolutely no way that their parents didn't know what was going on. That is something that I am going to categorically state right here, right now. So 7:45, 8:45, 9:45, 10:45, 11:45. Around 4 hours later, so at 12 o'clock midnight is when the ambulance has come and taken her to Broomfield Chelmsford Hospital. So she took the pill at 7:45, and then by the time the ambulance got to the house, she was already in a coma at this point. She never recovered. She never regained consciousness in any way. However, she did not die. She was not dead at all. When the ambulance got there, she was in a coma and she was taken to Broomfield Chelmsford Hospital. So we're now Sunday morning, the 12th. And I'm now going to read you out from BBC on this day. So the Sunday, obviously they're in the hospital with Leah, and the people in the hospital are Janet Betts, and Paul Betts being her father, and Janet Betts being her stepmother. However, everywhere it is said, everywhere, apart from on Wiki. It says that she's her mother. But I'm going to read you out what happened on Monday morning. So, Monday morning, the 13th, unlucky for some, Monday, the 13th of November, 1995, BBC, everybody's favourite establishment corporation. This is what it says. 1995. Ecstasy pill puts party girl in coma. An 18-year-old student is on life support machine after taking an ecstasy tablet at her 18th birthday party. Leah Betts from Latchingdon in Essex collapsed 4 hours after swallowing the pill, which police believe may have been contaminated. Ms. Betts' mother, Janet, found her slumped in the bathroom and gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation after she stopped breathing. Hospital tests later showed the teenager's brain had swollen after taking the drug, and doctors said her condition was critical. Both her parents had remained in the house during the party, specifically for the purpose of stopping any drug taking. Mrs. Betts is a nurse whose job involves warning school children about the dangers of drugs. Mr. Betts, a retired Metropolitan policeman in his 40s, oh, it doesn't say that, said they had warned their daughter repeatedly about the dangers of drugs. If people could sorry, I've got to just right. So this is Paul Betts's quote, and he must have given this to the News of the World on Sunday for it to be in the News of the World and on the BBC and all broken on Monday morning. And he says this: if people could only see my daughter, just look at this pretty 18-year-old who is flat on her back and can't even breathe. They would never take a drug again. 4 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the incident. Quote from Detective Constable Ian Sheed: there's a dealer out there selling poison. Police warned the tablet was probably one of a contaminated batch, which Leah bought at a nightclub in Basildon on Saturday. Detective Constable Ian Sheed said, there's a dealer out there. We suggest someone shops him before someone else ends up in hospital or dead. The tablets have a distinctive apple motif and are an off-white colour. Ecstasy has already been blamed for the deaths of more than 50 young people in the UK. 50? Where are those 50 people? The last victim was 17-year-old Daniel Ashton, who died after buying a tablet during a night out in Blackpool in September. Right, that is what it says. But then, in context, which is what's added later, it says this. Leah Betts died 3 days later without ever regaining consciousness. No, she actually died on the 16th. So it's not 3 days later. She took the pill on the 11th. She died on the 16th. That's 5 days. Can the BBC not count? Her parents have since become high-profile anti-drugs campaigners. Don't we know it? It goes on to talk about the inquest, which I'm going to come to next. So I've come to learn rather a lot about inquests and coronial processes after the hell and nightmare that has gone on with my dear departed brother-in-law and after his suspicious death. Unfortunately, it was an absolute nightmare, but I'm not going to go into that now. We're going to be talking about what happened at Leah Betts's inquest. So, all of that happened. She died on the 16th of November 1995. That was the Thursday. And then I went to work on Friday the 17th, and this was when the media frenzy, another media frenzy, was going off big style. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was astonishing how much the world's press there. I can describe it as something like, well, you saw it in the old days. They don't need to do these kind of big trailers for journalists these days, but in those days they brought big bands and all kinds of stuff with them. So it was an actual media frenzy outside Raquel's, and they were giving out flyers of Leah Betts' face in a coma, that he wanted everyone to look at her face and it to put us all off doing drugs. Now, you could very easily say that this is a good-hearted daddy who is just absolutely shocked and saddened by what's happened to her, and he's all genuine, and that nothing untoward is going on, and that he just wants to be an anti-drugs campaigner, and somehow, fortunately, his daughter has died of it. The whole drugs are bad, just say no campaigns have never worked. They know they don't work. These advertising agencies and things like that, they're really, really good. They know what they're doing, and they also know what doesn't work. And so obviously, I'm incredibly, incredibly suspicious about this whole situation. Now, this is obviously where we've got Bernie, the head doorman, and Mark Murray, who was the dealer in Raquel's, and they're all working for the firm, and the firm are running the show around the East End and Essex, and the boys were working with their own firm and other firms. And this is where gangster world is going on. But unfortunately, none of these big guys were arrested or anything, just the poor young friends of Leah who God knows what's gone on at that house, and they have been scared, intimidated, and frightened out of their lives because we all were. We were all like, oh no, everybody knows we're doing E's now. Not that, like, I didn't really care that much because we weren't doing anything wrong. We were having a good time. And although there was a lot of gangster skullduggery shit going on, we weren't really aware of it as young'uns. We were just young and having a good time and finding our way in the world. And this is where things can be really corrupted because it's the young ones that are used. It still happens on county lines, basically. So yeah, none of these guys were um, prosecuted in any way or arrested within this time. So, and we've got quite a lot of time, and the police always knew that the Essex boys didn't actually supply Leah, and that although they might have been providing the goods for that club and others, and they can say that they needed to be taken out. And this whole thing about dodgy drug deals and everything, no, no, no. It's it's very, very calculated. It's very, very premeditated. It's very, very dark. Very, very dark at the top sometimes. And in this amount of skullduggery and people doing things for money. and money is all that matters. And so I'm not going to go into the whole who shot them at the moment. No way, Jose. That's not happening right now. But I am talking about how we need to be dissecting and inspecting the officer that was Paul Betts and the stories that have been putting out. So I do believe that this selling the stories and selling stuff to the media is a very coercive, corrupted part of this story because this is how they make money. This is how things sell. This is how they demonize ecstasy, but get Red Bull in and have big advertising campaigns. And it is very, very Masonic and it is very, very dark. And you don't get to be apparently high up in the Met unless you're in the club. So these things that are coming to light and this knowledge that people that are in the club are working together to do really dark things is something we need to understand. So we can see that the News of the World, the BBC, they're all straight up the narrative of they know that it was the pill and that's what Daddy said and that's what everybody's going to say from now on and how close these people up the top were with these other Essex people in the club. I really don't, well, we will see because everything is deception and what people say and how people's narratives change, especially when you're talking about the death of your child and how Paul Betts in his interviews talks. And this is what I was saying about to Rio Zero on. He's dark from the eyes and his soul, and it isn't anger about losing his daughter. Um, it's not true for me, and I see right through it. And he's not a nice bloke, and he actually came to Adlib after this, but I'll go into that later. Adlib was a club in Southend. Anyway, the coronial process. What happened after this? So she died on 16th of November, and then we know that three boys got shot dead in a Range Rover, and then we know also that the friends of Leah were arrested and were being then criminally prosecuted by Essex Police because they didn't want to go after anybody else. They just wanted to go after those kids, scapegoats. Yes. Anyway. I'm now going to read to you from the Independent because this is from 1st of February 96 and this is the inquest. So her inquest has happened pretty damn quick because normally inquests, well, they're supposed to be within 6 months and maybe back then there wasn't such backlogs. But this is 1st of February 96. So we know the boys got shot dead in 6th December 95. So we're now only 1 month after Christmas. So 2 months after the boys got shot dead, 2.5 months after Leah died. So yeah, if there's no suspicious circumstances and there's nothing to see here, then we don't need any investigations into anything that's gone on there. We can get the inquest done pretty quickly. So nobody else, because sadly, Dorothy Betts, Leah Betts' real mum, his first wife, is deceased. So nobody else is shouting for Leah at this stage. So it's all up to Mr. Betts. And here we are at the inquest today. So the Independent. Leah's ecstasy death, like horror film. The parents of ecstasy victim Leah Betts yesterday told a packed coroner's court of the terrible moments when their daughter clawed at them in agony before collapsing into unconsciousness. In the evidence to Chelmsford Coroner's Court in Essex, Paul and Janet Betts relived the night of Leah's 18th birthday last November when she took the tablet that was to kill her. After hearing that ecstasy poisoning caused Leah to collapse and die, the coroner recorded a verdict of accidental death. Their heads bowed, Mr. Betts' arm protectively around his wife's shoulder. The couple sat quietly as Sarah Cargill, a long-time friend of Leah's, described how the two girls had given up clubbing at Racco's in Basildon after an argument with a member of staff there. She said the two then preferred to stay in, though they had experimented with cannabis and amphetamines, speed, before. Neither were regular drug users. Miss Cargill explained that the girls had arranged to buy 4 tablets from a friend's new boyfriend. They were warned the pills were stronger than those they had tried before, and on that Saturday night, they had discussed whether to take a whole or just a half. They both swallowed a whole tablet at 7:45 and waited for guests to arrive. I felt different from how I had on previous occasions, but I still felt fine, Miss Cargill said. Leah had drunk only moderately during the evening and had spent most of the time chatting with friends. She only became ill towards the end of the night when she began drinking glass after glass of water. Taking up the story, Mr. and Mrs. Betts came close to tears as they described how their daughter stopped breathing within minutes of being taken ill in the family bathroom where she had gone to drink water. Mrs. Betts said, I went upstairs and found her leaning over the wash basin. I said, What's up, Leah? She turned round, and when I saw her eyes, I knew there was something wrong. They were so big, they were enormous. It was like something out of a horror film. She's seen me on a few occasions. As the couple carried Leah to her bedroom, she revealed to them how she had taken the drug as she had done twice before. She then became increasingly ill, complaining of numbness in the face and legs and of headache and feeling sick. She was clawing and screaming at me to help her, Mrs. Betts said. The teenager slumped into a deeper state of collapse just as her mother was put through to the ambulance control. The couple began artificial resuscitation after Leah stopped breathing. She was pronounced dead after showing no sign of recovery during 5 days of intensive care. Cool, that was quick. I can't believe that, how quickly it jumps, from Leah stopped breathing and then she's pronounced dead 5 days later. Dr. Alastair Short, the consultant who treated her, said tests showed she had a much higher water level in her body than might have been expected, and so was suffering from water intoxication. The resulting pressure on the brain stopped the part which controls normal functions, such as breathing, from working properly. One of Britain's leading ecstasy experts, Dr. John Henry of the National Poisons Unit at Guy's Hospital, London, said several cases in recent years had showed the impact of drinking too much water to counteract ecstasy's effects could be just as damaging as the dehydration often associated with the drug. He said, in some people, ecstasy reduced the kidney's ability to cope with water. Dr. Paula Lanas, the Home Office pathologist, said there was no safe levels of the drug. Noting Leah's rapid deterioration took only a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes. The coroner, Dr. Malcolm Weir, concluded if she hadn't taken the ecstasy, she wouldn't have had the problem. Recording a verdict of accidental death caused by non-dependent abuse of drugs, Dr. Weir paid tribute to the stoicism and strength of character of Mr. and Mrs. Betts, who have campaigned ceaselessly against the use of ecstasy since Leah's death. So they went straight out on this drug campaign. I can only hope that all these efforts in bringing to a public forum all the dangers of ecstasy will be listened to by those people who expose themselves to this drug, Mr. Betts said. If it prevents one more fatality, Leah Betts' death will have not been in vain. After the weird thing to say. But anyway, after the hearing, Mr. Betts, a retired policeman. Why do policemen retire in their 40s? I just don't understand. I thought everybody else had to wait till they were 65. Mr. Betts said the inquest was the end of a chapter, but he and his wife, Leah's stepmother, oh, it does say it there, would continue their campaign. It's so pointless, young people throwing their lives away for a couple of hours of fun, he said. This verdict is a clear-cut message. Nobody knows how this drug is going to affect you. Now, that coming from the Independent. Now, Louise Jury, I'm sure she was a good journalist and being honest and listening to everything that Paul Betts said. But it's, I don't believe that family that is literally like when my brother-in-law died, we just sat there for the next 3 days in total fucking shock. There was no way we were going out doing all kinds of stuff. And I mean, in court, they tried to say he was smoking too much cannabis. We didn't just go out on a hunt for the cannabis dealer that killed him. And it's just the fact, the fact that they did this all so quickly is very, 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 very suspicious to me. So now if we fast forward again one more year, whole more year to March 1997, and this is a year later, and the only person that they can get into court is poor old Stephen Packman, who was one of their mates. He was only 19 years old, and he got found guilty of buying a couple of tablets which killed Leah. It's just horrible. Like, mate, it is not your fault in any way whatsoever. And how he could have been made to feel like he was the bad one here is really wrong. I really don't believe it could even happen. And I didn't, I just, I can't believe that he's the only person that's actually stood trial. And then Holmes and Steele, who were obviously set up as well. So Stephen Packman was just Leah's mate, and it was a second hearing, and then the jury failed to reach a decision in the trial. The first trial in Norwich in December, so 4 months before that, had been abandoned, and this trial date then arranged. Poor old Stephen must have been going through absolute hell. The jurors couldn't agree. I can't believe Essex police were doing this to Stephen. It's just horrible. Poor Stephen was threatened by Bernie, I believe, and allegedly. So I just can't. My heart actually goes out to him. He was Mr. Patman's former friend, Stephen Smith, admitted an identical charge, bless him, and he was given a conditional discharge. Um, Fair play to the other Stephen, two Stephens sticking up for each other. I like to see it, and it wasn't their fault. Sarah Cargill and Louise Yexley, both 18, admitted to being concerned with the supply of ecstasy to Leah. And they were both formally cautioned. Fortunately, they didn't have to, but they had to go through all these trials, and it's horrible when you know that if you were going to go for bigger dealers, then Mark Murray would have been there. Um, and and so then it goes on to say this. Mr. Betts and Leah's stepmother, Janet, oh, good, it does say it was his stepmother there, Janet, 47, a nurse, attended both these trials and the December hearing. Outside court, Mr. Betts talked of his feelings. He said, it's the end of one chapter and the start of a new life. Oh, really? Was that what he said to his ex-wife as well? And then he said this. There is a lot that can be learned because it shows that from one simple little tablet, there have been about 8 families traumatized. Justice is not done until the biggies are caught. what's been going on with that. He said he felt no bitterness towards Mr. Smith or any of the youngsters who helped get the ecstasy tablet to Leah. So just on the Crown Prosecution Service, they just wanted him prosecuted, yeah? Wanted the poor two lads. So wrong. I don't believe in it. Um, Leah and Miss Cargill, Sarah Cargill said at the court that they'd obtained the pills for the party and they'd spent £22.50 each. £22.50 each? Mate, they ripped you off as well. £22.50 each on four? Or is it £22.50 for four? Or it sounds a bit wrong, that price anyway. Mr. Smith, who's Mr. Oh, Stephen Smith, said that Stephen Packman had approached a dealer at a Basildon nightclub called Raquel's. Wonder if he agree on his behalf. Mr. Packman denied that and said Mr. Smith was lying. Well, I think that's because he'd been threatened and intimidated. And then it says in this independent story, which I'm reading out so nobody can get me done for anything, the jury also heard that Mr. Packman had been taped by the News of the World newspaper while talking to the head doorman at Raquel's. During that conversation with Patrick O'Mahony, or Bernie, who is also known as Bernie King, Mr. Packman appeared to admit buying the drugs. So this Bernie setting up Mark by the looks of things at this point to take the rap. Mr. Packman said he approached Mr. O'Mahony, Bernie, after being told the doorman wanted to talk to him about the drugs supplied to Leah. Stephen Packman said Bernie had a reputation for violence and that he had said anything the doorman wanted to hear because he feared for his safety. Police said outside the court that this aspect of the investigation was now at an end and they weren't going to talk to Bernie about it at all. And so here we have a situation where before even anybody's got shot dead in a Range Rover, we have a situation where Bernie is selling an awful lot of stories or working against everybody. And this whole ecstasy poison is a sham, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. I don't believe anybody ever thought there was any poison in that ecstasy at all. And I believe that we should be looking very carefully at going, look, this is the truth. These people have not been held accountable, and the whole truth of what's gone on here has not been told. And I believe it should be. And call me crazy if you like. But when I came into this whole story, I'd had kind of what I can only call as a channeling message downloads from Leah of the truth of not being told and the divine side of it. And really, it wasn't like oh, my truth hasn't been told. It was, first of all, you need to look into this and discover more and look at what you know, i.e. me and my experiences, and uncover who is telling the truth in this whole story and who is not. That is my Leah bit for now. These dates are really important because, as we know, then three guys got shot dead in a Range Rover. And yes, they were not nice pieces of work because really they were doing a ridiculous amount of drugs. And this is where it goes really wrong because there's a big difference from doing 1A, which I'm telling you now, I really don't think is ever going to kill anybody unless you've got a really bad heart or something and your heart just can't cope with the rush. And I think there might be some people, but generally it is a cocktail of abuse, a cocktail of drugs, a cacophony of all kinds of abuse that causes this kind of Um, Death, what causes death, because we're actually very resilient creatures, and it's quite easy to, it's quite hard. It's actually very hard to get rid of us. And so one pill does not cause these kind of problems, but when you're doing a cocktail of um really hardcore drugs, so crack is obviously a major problem. People that have done smack as well, major issues. These two drugs are highly addictive and highly problematic, and two drugs that I have never have done. Um, Back in these days, people were doing when there was a lot, you know, same now. When there's so much money around, there's so much cocaine, there's so much champagne, there's so much uh, there's no barriers, there's no boundaries, there's nothing to stop people getting, and steroids, people like, especially the gangster boy, well, the boys just beefing themselves up. So they are Lacard or they are hard or all of this kind of thing. Or they think it gets girls, or whatever, for whatever reasons, they think it looks nice. For me, I think it's a kind of mutilation of the masculine, the divine masculine figure. I love a divine masculine man. I don't like things popping out in directions that they shouldn't be popping out in, like J. Paul's stomach. Ugh. Sorry, mate, but that's just how I feel about all of that kind of thing. So the Essex boys, yeah, they were doing a lot of drugs, and these guys that were older and had lots more money were doing an awful lot of drugs, and an awful lot of abuse goes with it. Because unfortunately, when people are this maniac with it, then they turn into monsters. It really does. It eats into their soul, and sometimes when they're doing the wrong kind of drugs and they've got the wrong kind of issues going on and all of that, then it turns into something really beastly, really beastly. And I know that there's a lot of beastly stuff going on between family members and older people that are supposed to look out for you and don't. And so this was where all three Essex boys got corrupted. I feel the most sorry for the younger one, Craig. Um, and but nobody deserves to be shot dead. Like, the police corruption is, there's just no coincidence that Leah Betts' dad was a policeman, and there's no coincidence that he went and made loads of money out of it. And him and Jan, I think, is it, or him and Jan's son, or is this, I'm not sure, and I need to get my facts right on Paul Betts' son, I believe, is allegedly uh not very nice with women either. So, like father, like son. And so I would love to know more about the Betts family setup and the when they when he split up with the ex-wife. One of the things, and I will put it out here just as a teaser, so make sure everybody tunes in to the end. I was told at the time, and there was no reason for people to lie, that Leah Betts wasn't living with Paul Betts and that she had left home. And that she was only having that party there because he said about having it for her on that date. So, well, well, these things that we will unpack. I want to thank everybody for subscribing. It really, really does mean a lot. Thanks for the donations, and I am now monetizing, so you can actually support me. And I do need all the support I can get. I am so grateful. I really am. Because it's not easy unpacking these things, especially when there's some horrible people who've got lots to hide. But karma's a bitch, and the law of cause and effect is consequences, and these things, the truth does always come out in the end. It really does. So big love, everybody, and enjoy your weekend because it is Friday. and I'm sending lots of love out to all of you. We will keep on talking about this and unpack it. And I do have an Essex Boys and Girls, The Truth and Facts group on Facebook. Go search it and join up. Come get involved. Just get involved in the conversation. We will get to the truth. The truth does matter.